Good morning, everyone. I'm Alain Nochimowski. I'm the Executive VP of Innovation at Viaccess-Orca. I also established and manage the data science practice at Viaccess-Orca. So we're going to talk this morning about the future of TV and advertising, and more specifically, in particular, the role of data and AI in this future. Okay. To do that, I thought the best way to address the topic was actually to take you through some of the insights, some of the learnings that we get from the field, from interacting with our customers, that we believe reveal some insights as to the future and the dynamics of the TV and advertising market. Okay? The first insight I want to share with you today has to deal with hybridization. Okay? So in the past, it was pretty clear. There was pretty clear lines. On the one hand, you had the pay TV actors, the guys that would basically live out of subscription money. Okay? And on the other hand, you'd have the free TV player. So it was not free, of course. It was advertising funded. Okay? And there was a clear line between those two worlds. Now, moving forward, what we see on the market is that those lines are blurring. Okay? If you look at the operators, for instance, if they have inventories, so if they have real estate to monetize, okay, they are more and more considering now moving to the other side of the fence and monetizing their inventories, for instance, through addressable TV. Okay, that means for them diversifying their revenues and, of course, mitigating the stagnation of their revenues. Now, if they don't have inventories, they can even play a role in this chain. Okay, they don't have inventories, but they do have assets. They do have access to data, and they do have insertion capabilities. So even in that situation, they can play a part. They can take a piece of the advertising cake. Okay. On the other end of the spectrum, if you look at the broadcasters that traditionally play in the ad-funded TV model part of this chart, those guys are currently deploying direct-to-consumer services. And of course, they're looking at deploying premium offering because they want to increase the ownership of the customers, okay? What's interesting is that the pure play, the new entrants, the OTT service providers, some of them started SVOD, subscription VOD, but they are also looking at decreasing the acquisition cost by implementing some AVOD models. So at the end of the day, what you see is really those lines being blurred, okay, and the emergence of an hybrid business model for TV service provider, okay? So let's park for a moment all these macro concepts and look at the micro level, okay? We'll come back to the macro later on. Everything starts from the collection of data. So not all operators, not all service providers are implementing the TV data collection mechanisms. But for those who have already implemented, they do see that there is plenty of data there, okay, and certainly underexploited. So what you see here on this graph is the way our data scientists would arrange 1 year of TV consumption data for a given household, okay? So typically on the vertical line, this is a temporal line, okay? You see 1 year consumption. Each line corresponds to a week of consumption, okay? And on the horizontal axis, we see what we call the features of this data, okay? So it can be the zapping activity. So here in this case, it's linear TV, but it will be the same for on-demand TV. So it's zapping activity, and what kind of genre people do consume, okay? Now the darkness here is a measurement of a measure of the intensity, if you want, of viewing. Okay, so that gives you the profile, the viewing profile of a household over a year. Okay. The interesting thing is that when you apply AI techniques to this data, and this will be my third insight here, is that you can extract a lot of interesting information, starting with user segmentations. Okay, this line that you see in the middle of the graph has been drawn by AI, by our AI. So it's what we call in our jargon a life moment. Okay, so this one is very, very visible. Okay, but we here spot something specific. If you see what's the bottom part of the screen, which is below the line, and the upper part, there are different behaviors. Okay, so something happens here. So here, typically, you see the genres are different and the activity is different. Okay, what you see happen here is that all of a sudden, kid content is being viewed in this household. Okay, so this is very extreme. Not all such life moments are pretty extreme. Okay. But what we capture here is a moment of a kid arriving in a, so it's not necessarily a birth. It can be, I don't know, kids staying at the grandparents, for instance, and we can capture certain life moment only by looking at the TV consumption data. Think at recently retired, recently moved, kid left the house, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Now, if we apply more complex techniques, more complex classifiers, okay, including, for instance, neural networks, you may extract as well very interesting insights. Okay, you may extract things like composition of the household. What profile of the household? Is it a young profile? Is it a midlife profile? Okay, you may be able to as well discern if there are various viewing patterns in it that would give an hint as to the number of people that actually live in this household. Okay, all that information is very important, very interesting, because it can help basically segment this household. Now, if we zoom a little bit out, okay, and we put what I just shown in the context of targeting techniques, okay, basically there are very interesting insights as well to understand here. Sorry. Traditional targeting techniques, so for people who launch, for instance, addressable TV, okay, they will use two types of data traditionally. First-party data on the one hand, or third-party data on the other end. Okay, this is segmented, this is categorized per two axes, quality and uniqueness, range and availability. Okay, it's pretty fair, intuitive to understand that the more data you collect, the less precise you might be. Okay, so first-party data is typically deterministic data that is collected by the service provider, okay, that sits in its CRM, declarative data, very high quality, but limited range, because it only concerns the prospects or the customers of the service provider. Okay, on the other end of the spectrum, the third-party data is the data that will be sold by brokers. Okay, there are brokers that sell data about every data subject. Okay, you, me, you know, your I don't know, your what you buy, where you live, what's if you are about to change cars. Okay, this is data you can sell. You can buy by the kilos to complement your segments. Okay, this is traditionally the traditional segmentation or targeting technique are comprised of those two different techniques. Now, in the era of GDPR, everybody knows about what GDPR is, okay, which entered into force last year, okay, with the stringent stringent constraints around consents, for instance, okay, the use of third-party data is going to change. The economics of it are going to change, okay. If GDPR prescribes that you need to basically ascertain that that consent has been collected in a proper way, how can you ascertain that in a chain of brokers, of intermediaries? Question mark. Okay, and if you do ascertain that, then for sure the cost of it mechanically will rise. Okay, this is where the TV data and AI come to play a role here. Okay, because we believe that's also another type of data that can actually be used in the segmentation here. Now think about it. It's true, it's not deterministic data, it's probabilistic data. I showed you some of the models that we play with, okay? But it is constantly up to date, constantly updated by streams of TV viewership, okay? And then that gives you a view of the life cycle of an household, which is also very, very, very insightful. Now, if we come back to my first point, and you try to link all that together, okay? So if we agree that future TV service provider business model will look like that was the overall equation, okay? With two members, advertising member and pay TV member, okay? TV data and AI can actually play a role or facilitate the emergence of this kind of model at many places, okay? So if you look at the pay TV side of the equation, okay, so it's very caricatural P&L statement here, okay? Pay TV operators are confronted with growing costs, so content costs are growing in the age of cord cutting and cord shaving, the retention costs also are growing, okay, but revenues are plateauing. Now, if you apply the TV data and AI to this equation, you can certainly spot the churners, spot the guys that are about to churn, apply mitigation techniques, and on the income side, you may as well promote some of the packages through upselling. Okay, so this is one part of the equation, which I think is pretty well understood by most service providers as of yet. Okay, the other part of the equation, you see here apply what I just explained. Okay, so here again, the income would be somehow a function of impression and CPM. Okay, cost per mil impression. Okay, by applying the very techniques that I just explained, you can certainly alleviate reliance on third-party data costs, but you can as well improve the CPM because it's going to be targeted CPM. And through personalization techniques, you can as well augment the number of viewing opportunities, which in advertising jargon would be called impressions. Okay? And of course, you can imagine all sorts of optimization between those two members of the equation. Okay? You may imagine some freemium model where you would catch some segments on the advertising model and you want them to convince them to pay subscription. Okay, so TV data and AI can help here in all this process. Okay, now if we take a look at the technical enabler that will allow what I just called, and this is also a very interesting insight, is that you start to see now service provider that want to leverage the commonalities between the two members of this equation that I just discussed. Okay, the advertising part and the pay TV part, because there are some commonalities. Okay, so that's a typical blueprint for pay TV content. Okay, and you can add on top of it the data collection mechanisms, enrichment with AI. Okay, analytics. Okay, now these same enablers, or part of them, can as well enable, so now the audience management, the segmentation that I just described, which can fuel the programmatic chain that will in turn allow ad insertion. Okay, so there are definitely some commonalities to be basically leveraged when you deploy, when you think holistically about TV data monetization. So this somehow looks like, I'd say, an architectural blueprint of tomorrow's service provider, tomorrow hybrid TV service provider. Okay, this future is not that far away, actually. This week, we, Viaccess-Orca, made an announcement with a programmatic partner, Smart. Okay, so we released that last week at Demexco, actually. And that's, I think, is a very important stepping stone in that path toward this future vision that I share with you, because now we can actually monetize, an operator can now monetize through our enablers their audience segments on the programmatic chain together with Smart. Okay, so that is what I wanted to share with you this morning. I'm not sure we have time for questions, but I'd be happy to take questions offline. You are welcome to visit us. Thank you for your attention, of course, and you're more than welcome to visit us on our booth, where you'll see interesting demos illustrating all that I just shared with you.